All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of the Ubuntu Community Team Q&A. Today, we've got we've got the usual suspects, the Ubuntu Community Team. I'm myself, David Planella, and we've got Daniel Holbach and Michael Hall, but we're joined by a really special guest as well. We've got Ryan Sipes from the Mycroft team. I'm sure he'll tell you all about Mycroft, everything that you want to know. But for those of you who are new to this, Mycroft is an open source, open hardware IA, which is powered by Ubuntu. And they've recently reached their funding goal on Kickstarter. And I know Ryan is quite excited about it. We are as well. And he's here to answer any questions that we have about Mycroft and open source and everything else. We're also here to answer questions about Ubuntu as every week. And the way this works is essentially, if you go to ubuntuonair.com, you'll find chat widget, which you can click on. And there you can answer you can ask your questions. Just remember to prefix them with the word question in all caps, and then we'll just work through the questions as they come along. So I think that general intro. Daniel, Mike, have I forgotten anything?
If anybody's using their own IRC client, we are on Freenode. The channel is #ubuntu-on-air. Or if you don't have one, like David said, you can go to ubuntuonair.com and you'll get the video and an embedded chat widget there.
Yeah, and make sure that you circle, friend, follow, subscribe, whatever Ubuntu on Air's accounts you can find to make Jose happy. And you're going to learn about all the old and new shows, whatever's happening.
And if you have any questions, you can ask them anytime in the IRC. Start them with the word question in all capital letters, and that way it'll be highlighted for us, and we will go through and answer them in the order they come in.
All right, then. So with all that intro, first of all, what I see on IRC is that some members are already congratulating the Mycroft team. They're saying they're very happy. So congrats to you, Ryan, and the whole team. And perhaps you want to tell us a bit about Mycroft and what you've been doing.
So first, I'd like to say thanks to everybody. My reputation is beginning to precede me online, and we've had a lot of success on Kickstarter. Mycroft is an open source AI for everyone. That's what we call it. And essentially, what the Kickstarter is for the hardware primarily. The hardware is a little box that you can stick on your end table or on your, somewhere in your house, and you can speak to it, tell it to control your Internet of Things like smart lights, your television via Chromecast or Roku, or any other internet connected device, and it does that easily, just voice controlled. And then, of course, there's a software side of it, which is something that is very important, I assume, to most Ubuntu fans, and that's an open source software stack that understands natural language and performs, functions based on that. So one of our stretch goals, our first stretch goal that we're trying to hit here in these last couple of days, is the ability to control your Linux desktop with Mycroft software, and this is actually something that we want to tackle because it's such a perfect fit, because Mycroft software already runs on a Linux box, being the Raspberry Pi 2 and the Mycroft hardware. And so we think it's not that big of a stretch to pour some development time into that and to make it work on, for instance, Ubuntu desktop and Ubuntu phone. And so we wanted to put that as a stretch goal. That's pretty important to us. And we really hope that some of the folks in here will help promote that the last couple of days and help us reach our stretch goals so that we can have, essentially, so that we can keep the pace and continue to innovate alongside these other platforms that already have voice control. And for instance, like we'll just say it, Cortana on Windows 10 and Siri will eventually drop on Mac OS 10, and it's already on the iPhone. And we, as the Linux community, want to make sure that we can keep pace with them, but not only keep pace with them, but innovate ahead of them, because that's what we've always done. And so the way to do that is to, everybody to throw behind a couple of good open source projects that do this, and let's knock it out of the park. And so that's what Mycroft is hoping to help facilitate.
And it's really neat because, one of the things that we were asked quite a bit about Ubuntu phones is, are you going to have something like Siri or Google Now on there? And we always, we had to say, no, probably not, because that's a hard task to do, and that's not where our focus is. So, this coming along at a really good time for us also, and that it does give us an open source alternative to Siri and Cortana. So I'm really looking forward to that. You mentioned the stretch goal for the desktop client. Can you tell us what that stretch goal is and how close you are to it?
So the stretch goal is it is essentially what we're looking at is porting the Mycroft software over to launch applications on the Linux desktop, control media, and perform other functions that you would expect out of a voice assistant on the desktop. And fortunately, because of the way that we design Mycroft software, when you tell Mycroft to do something, he goes through and he figures out your intent, and then he essentially runs a command on the command line. Well, that is pretty simple, and that's good because that works really well when you're testing on the desktop. Because that's what you want. You want, hey, launch Firefox and go to this website, and then Mycroft can just fire off a command that says launch Firefox, and here's the parameter for the website, and it pops up. And so so as far as like the desktop goes, this is and even the phone is similar. This is a project that we think that we can really do something interesting with, and we think is not too large of a task for us to tackle, considering the work we've already done to get it on the Linux, because we're already using a Linux stack. But I'm really happy today to be able to announce something new that we're working on, which is we had a lot of questions over the past few weeks, and this is going to benefit both the Linux desktop stretch goal and the mainline project. And the question we got was, what if I don't want to use third-party APIs? Because and I'm sorry to go off on a tangent here, but this is super exciting to me. But one question we got all the time was, okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, you guys have to essentially go out to a third-party API to determine intent, of the message of the query that we're asking, and that was kind of a sore spot for us because the problem is to come up with an intent system and to get it working well. That takes a lot of capital, typically machine learning, and a pretty hefty backend. And so it was on our goal. It was one of our goals to get to eventually, but for the first iteration, we were kind of thinking that's something that we really can't tackle. We don't have enough resources. Well, the community that's kind of building around Mycroft has been emailing me and messaging me, and I got a random message out of the blue from a Sean Fitzgerald, and he said, "Hey, I've worked on past projects, a couple of them that you guys probably know, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say them, but they are other personal assistants that are out there on the market and widely used right now." And he said, I wrote an intent parser, and I've been looking to open source it, and I'd like to open source it with your project. And so
wow.
We've looked at it, and we've spent some time experimenting with it, and I wanted to share. We got a logo for it today, and there it is. It's called Adapt, and we're going to be releasing it with our Mycroft source code. And so not only will you now have the Mycroft software stack that we've been talking about, but you'll also have an intent engine that can be, modified to fit your needs, and that's an important piece of the puzzle in making this entire stack open source. So I wanted to wait until I got on the Q&A to tell everybody about that, and so that's my big news for the Q&A. And I'm sorry, that's a big tangent, babe, from what you asked, Mike.
No, that's exciting.
Excellent.
So is this going to be is that going to be server side also, or is that something that's going to run on the device?
So we're playing with the idea of whether or not to run it locally. We think because it was designed to run on minimal resources, because he did testing on a Raspberry Pi. I think that it's possible to run it on the Raspberry Pi, but we're still playing around with the idea of whether or not we want to bulk it up a little bit and put it on the back end, or if we want it to run locally. Fortunately, for the people who really want to hack Mycroft, that means that it will be able to run locally. For those of you who really don't want to, work with an existing back end, if you just want to spin up your own. But we're still debating what exactly we're going to do in our implementation.
So what would be really cool, because you are using Snappy Ubuntu for Mycroft, is if that becomes a Snappy app, then it can be either installed on the device or on a image running Ubuntu just as easily. So really, it becomes just a matter of choice. Which one do you want to deploy it to?
Yeah, and we're planning to run everything, all of our packages through Snappy. So we're hoping to have this everything be a clean Snappy package, so that everything's easy to install and have set up. And that's actually one of our big things. We get a question about why we haven't open sourced the whole stack yet. We're really trying to make a good first impression and make sure everything is easy to install and configure and doesn't burn anybody, because a lot of open source projects get a pretty bad reputation for releasing code and then no one can install it, set it up, and get it working right. And especially something as complex as this, we really want to make sure and almost over-engineer it, before we release it, so that everybody can have a good experience. Because this is something that, unfortunately, a lot of companies have beat us at, is having, like if you think of Apple, or you think of some of these other tech giants, is when they release a project or a product, it's ready. It's got a lot of everything, all the bugs and everything. Well, not all the bugs, but a lot of the bugs worked out. And so we're really trying to make sure we have a seamless experience before we roll it out to the world. Because as somebody who has already experimented with a lot of projects like this, I found it very difficult to configure and set them up and get them running. And so I don't want that to be the experience with Mycroft.
All right, excellent. So we took quite a lot of questions already from our community of listeners. Perhaps we can start with them, and then in the meantime, if there's any other news to share, we can talk about it in between questions. So user the best is asking, if the Mycroft team won't reach the first stretch goal, will you implement the desktop interface for Ubuntu anyway at some point? All right, we're starting with the tricky questions.
Yeah, this is very much a trick question. Yes, we likely will roll it out, but we really would like to hit the stretch goal so we can pay a developer to work on that implementation full time. It'll go a lot faster that way. It'll be a lot more seamless. But I really want to be truthful and say yes. It's very likely that it will roll out to Ubuntu if we don't hit the stretch goal. But I don't want people to be like, oh, they're going to roll it out, so I don't need to back. Because if you want to see it happen in a good time frame and work really well, I would encourage you to back us so that we can pay somebody to tackle that problem and focus on maintaining that branch of the software. And so yes, that's the answer. And I encourage you, please, please, please back us.
All right. Okay. So our very own Daniel Holbach is asking, why did you pick Ubuntu and Snappy Core as a basis?
So so Snappy, we looked at it, and we had a lot of conversations about it, and we actually backed off from it, and we were working with Raspbian, and then we realized, you know, we really think that, like I said, we want to deliver a seamless experience, and we want to have it as painless as possible. And we decided that Snappy apps, or snaps, is that the term we're using now for the Snappy apps? So we determined snaps.
Yeah, unofficial, informal term, yeah.
Okay. Well, snaps
Snaps.
are really self-contained, and it's really a neat piece of software a neat project that we really like. And so we decided, after a while, and some conversations with the Ubuntu community, we decided that this would be the best way to deliver apps, and that we can, and like with the Snappy store and everything, we figured there's a lot that we can do in this space that would have required a lot of fancy engineering on our part, and we didn't want to duplicate effort when somebody else already had a great implementation that we could use. And so we were like, hey, let's not try to pour our resources into tackling a problem that somebody else is already tackling. And we wrote a post on it on the developer blog on Ubuntu that you can check out and get more information on why we chose it, because there are a lot of really neat things that Snappy allows us to do, and so and all of that's pretty much covered in that post. And I'm just excited to continue to play with the technology, because it seems like every time I sit down to mess with it, I learn more, and I learn how to do more interesting stuff with it. And so we're pretty early in. I think everybody at this point is early in learning all the stuff that Snappy can allow them to do. And so we'll continue to post blog posts as we learn more about how we can implement unique and interesting solutions with Snappy Core. That's all I got on that.
All right, the next question is from Jess Caracas. He's asking, do you think that implementing Mycroft in Ubuntu will give the same privacy response as Cortana on Windows 10? So I think he means there's been a bit of backlash against Cortana in Windows 10, people concerned about privacy. How do you see that working for a Mycroft desktop app? So
the first thing I want to say is I am a very privacy conscious person, and so I really don't like the way that things have gone with Cortana, because Cortana's user agreement or EULA or whatever has some very disturbing language. Like, we can use your voice data for anything. We're going to retain it. We can, essentially they own anything you say into that mic. Mycroft, we've worked really hard on coming up with a good privacy policy. It's a challenge, and nobody should make it out to be anything less than a really difficult challenge to use voice data and to do interesting things with it and to make it useful and also respect privacy. But we're trying new solutions on how to anonymize the data, any data that we pull out, how to make sure that it doesn't live on our servers. It's just real quick, like, let's pull out the intent, let's figure out what this person is trying to do, and then forget it. And but one thing you have to remember is Mycroft isn't looking to make money off of your data. Google, that's their business model. They want to mine your data in order to sell ads to you. Windows, God knows why they want your data, but I'm sure that they would love to be Google. And so the difference between them and us is pretty clear, and that's that we're not trying to make money off of your data. we want to sell you a product in Mycroft, or we want you to use Mycroft on the desktop and maybe use some modules or apps for Mycroft. And some of those might be paid apps, but we have other revenue models that aren't centered around mining your data. And so that data, other than from a strictly scientific point of view of whether or not our service is working and whether or not we can improve it, there's nothing else that we really want out of your data. We just want to provide a good experience. And so Adapt is one of those things where it helps us not send your data to anybody else, so that's good. The new Adapt intent parser allows us to also possibly run locally, which we're looking at, like we talked about before. And so that would make sure that your data is not being shipped off necessarily to remote servers, although there's still this speech-to-text part of that we're going to have to nail down and come up with a really good solution to that to keep your privacy intact. But like I said, we're working on anonymization solutions. So once again, this is something that we're going to cover on our blog, as we come up with different ways of doing this. And also this week, probably before the end of the campaign, so either today or tomorrow, we're going to be launching our community page, which essentially will be our forums and on the website. And since we're really basing our entire business on the open source community and having an open culture, we're going to be posting on there and asking for suggestions. And we know that we're pretty smart people, but we know that there are also a ton of smart people out there who are contributing to open source projects, and we'll be asking for feedback and hoping that people will help us come up with solutions that keep your privacy intact. So that's a very long answer to the question, but essentially it's at the forefront of our mind, and we're doing all that we can right now to come up with ideas for how to respect your privacy.
Okay, next question is again from Just Caracas. He's asking, will the voice-to-text conversion also be open source?
That's a good question. Right now, we use Pocket Sphinx for the initial phrase. So Pocket Sphinx runs locally and looks for Mycroft. The rest of anything you say is just dropped, and since it's just running local, so it never makes it off the box until it actually gets to your query. Text or speech to text is very, very, very. It's a very interesting area to be involved in. There's so much that goes into speech to text, and so it's a very difficult thing to solve without sending it off remotely. Like Pocket Sphinx works great for getting the keyword, but our testing with having it understand complex sentences and queries has been less than perfect in a lot of ways. And so we realize that we need a robust solution to handle that and get good accuracy. And right now, we don't have a good open source solution for that other than Pocket Sphinx. We've seen some others. I would be really interested if you're a member of those communities that are working on open source speech to text, if you would reach out to us. You can email me at ryan.sipes@mycroft.ai, or you can hit us up on our contact form. Right now, we use third-party services to do the speech to text, and we're pretty much paying for that with those services, so that they can't use like our queries and they're not mining the data from our queries. And we would continue that relationship if we couldn't find a good speech to text solution that was open source that we could either run locally on the box or on our own backend. But if you are somebody who's working on this right now, we'd be really interested in in helping out with your project, and hopefully you could help out with ours. And so it's a challenge that we're still looking at. We have, like I said, right now we have services that we use for this, like detailed on our Kickstarter page, but we'd like to move to a completely open source solution.
Cool. All right, so we've got another related question, and I realize that there might be some overlap in those, but I think, given the fact that our community members are asking them, I think I'll just pose that question as well. Pavak Paul is asking, will the Mycroft speech-to-text part installed on the device locally? Sorry, let me just restart again. Will the Microsoft speech-to-text part be installed on the device locally or on the cloud? I'd love to have it locally for privacy.
You can use Pocket Sphinx to do it locally, but like I said, and that's already installed in the box. But that accuracy is not near as high as, and that when I say accuracy, I mean how accurate it is at figuring out what you said. It's not nearly as high as the other services that we use for that have robust backends and use machine learning to improve. And so like I said, we're working on trying to find a good solution. We're trying to find a good solution to make this work that we don't have to use any third-party services, and that we can hopefully have locally. But like I said, it also is pretty resource intensive, so I don't know if that's going to work. But yeah, like I said before, we're looking at solutions, and we're more than happy to hear the community's feedback on this, because like I said, it's a difficult problem to solve, and other companies are spending millions of dollars trying to solve this problem, and so we're open to feedback on this, and so if you want to contact us, feel free.
All right. Next question is actually from Daniel. Daniel, do you want to ask the question yourself?
Sorry, I was just busy pasting, copy and pasting everything. I wanted to know how many people are working on Mycroft.
Right now, if you're talking strictly about developers, we have about 4 developers working on it. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about our entire team, we have about 12 people now who work on the entire team. Not all those people are paid right now. Until the Kickstarter ends, nobody's paid. So we're actually losing money every day trying to promote the project, and we've spent a pretty penny trying to do that. But that's fine. It's all worth it if we can produce an open source, artificial intelligence and voice assistant for people. So right now our team's kind of small. Once the Kickstarter ends, we'll be able to actually pay more people to come on and work with that, because throughout this whole campaign, we've been spread really, really thin as far as man hours and people working, because everybody's working and nobody's getting paid, and that's and we've had actually a lot of everybody's worked really hard, so that's really great, but everybody still has to pay their rent, everybody still has to feed their families, and so I'm really glad that we funded, and I'm excited to finally bring some people on full-time and be able to just focus on development.
Oh, thanks. There's a question from, there's another question of mine. How long have you been planning and scheming Mycroft already?
Well, so here's the backstory. Everybody on the Mycroft team is part of a makerspace in Lawrence, Kansas. And the makerspace was actually started by Josh, our CEO of the Mycroft project. and he's kind of a serial entrepreneur, and he owns an ISP and the makerspace, and so he went to another makerspace in Kansas City, and someone had this. It's called Hammerspace, and they had this AI which was controlling just I think a couple of computers there called Iris. And we looked at it and we played around with it, and it was pretty rigid. There was not, I mean, you had to say exactly the right phrase to get it to do something, and this was at the beginning of this year probably, or maybe even in December of last year. And we saw it, and we talked about it, and we were like, hey, we want this at our space, but we want it to be better. And so we started building Mycroft, and we came up with some. I wish I was at the office right now. I forgot to bring the Mycroft prototype spec, but we built this really ugly enclosure that would hang from the ceiling, and it had like this weird eye on it, like this glowing eye that just like stared down at you, and we thought that was pretty badass, and we were connecting it up to the smart lights in the space and everything. But then a couple things happened. First off, as we started hacking on it more, we realized that we were working on something that could be a product. And secondly, we were working on something that we knew in our hearts, because we're all open source enthusiasts on the team, that we should give to the world and open source. And so first we had to reconcile those two things, because I, as much as an open source fan that I am, there are a lot of considerations to make when you actually plan on sharing your secret sauce with the world, and especially when you're trying to build a product around it. It's both wonderful. It's both a wonderful challenge and a scary challenge, because you don't know how the community is going to react to you, and you're selling to, especially when you're talking about open source products, a lot of your fans are going to be the smartest people in the room. A lot of the people in the community are the smartest people in the room. So we had a lot of really hard questions to answer, and we've had hard questions this whole campaign. And it's not that they shouldn't be asked, and it's not that they shouldn't be answered, but building a product and basing it on open source, I think, is one of the hardest things to do. But and then the other side of that is, so there's all the software components to that, but there's also the hardware components, which hardware is not something that I'm super great at. And I'm a software guy. And so we had to start talking to people outside of our normal software hacker kind of group, and we brought in Derek Schweppe, who's an industrial designer, and the guy from Lucid Labs, who's a hardware hacker, and point is that it's been a journey from trying to one-up somebody's AI in their makerspace to building an AI, and that's probably been since December, but we probably really started hacking on the product in April. And so it's been very fast in that way, but it seems like it's gone by in like a blink, but it also seems like it's been forever since we started, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you've come a long way for only being at this for 6 months, really.
Yeah, but it's been a lot of like, well, when I first started this project, I was working full time too, and so it's been a lot of like 60 or 80 hour weeks. It seems like of just like hacking and hacking and hacking on it.
Oh. All right. Let's see. The next question I think is from Nightmare. He asks, "Is there any chance we could see Mycroft support on Ubuntu phone?"
Absolutely, absolutely. Whenever I decided we wanted to say like, hey, let's target the Linux desktop with our stretch goal, the first thing that actually came to my mind was the Ubuntu phone, but we didn't want to we didn't want to just target the Ubuntu phone. The Ubuntu phone is the place that I feel like you talked about earlier, this now an expectation with your smartphones, and so I thought that was a perfect fit, and maybe one day Ubuntu will decide to have a closer relationship with Mycroft, and that's something that we're not opposed to. Thus begin the rumors.
All right. Next question from Return Trip. I joined late. Will Ryan showcase Mycroft today?
We changed the face on Mycroft with the LED lights and everything, so unfortunately I wasn't able to get the hardware all ready to go for a demo. Here's what I'll do, and because I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I will see if I can get a little demo online sometime, either this week or next week, and when I do that, I'll try to get get maybe a Hangout set up or something, so that we can all jump in and talk to him. Maybe even on another Q&A. But we're at a point where we're hacking really, really, really quickly on Mycroft and iterating quickly, and that makes for a lot of work getting done, but not necessarily a stable base for good demos necessarily. And so David and Mike talked to me about this. I will try my damnedest to get something up that I can show one of these weeks here in the near future on a Q&A. But fortunately, now that we're funded, we can bring on developers to help me iterate faster and to get to something that we really can show off and be a really neat demo. And I'd even like to get a couple of smart lights hooked up to them like we had at one point, and see if we can't get it controlling some Internet of Things like the Chromecast and some smart lights for the potential demo.
It'd be interesting to see if you can control Mycroft remotely via Hangout as well. All right, sorry, Mike, I interrupted you. You're saying?
Oh, I was just saying that I was looking forward to seeing that video.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get it out soon. I'm excited to share a really good demo. But one thing that I've talked about a couple times, but I don't know that I've actually shared it on a video, is the Mycroft in the video that we showed on the Kickstarter video is a working unit. He was working really well at the time, but once we did the video, we realized we wanted to make some changes to both the software and the hardware. And one of those changes, to be completely transparent, is the LED had some noises that we didn't like, and that noises in a unit that's supposed to be listening to you is never good. And so we've been doing a lot of development around ensuring that none of the components inside of Mycroft interfere with its ability to hear you. And so this is something that we're working on, and we're trying to get the best possible. We're trying to get it completely engineered and squared away before we have a live demo, because once again, this is goes back to our you only have one chance for a really good first impression, and we have the video the video was probably the best. The Kickstarter video was probably the best version of Mycroft that we've had running so far. Now we're engineering to make sure there aren't any sound issues, because we want to start demoing him a lot more, and we want it to be as seamless as possible. And so this is something that we're working on right now, and as soon as we have something that we're really, really happy with, we'll demo him again.
And I have to say, your attention to detail on these hardware components has been very impressive. I mean, people think, I'll just throw a bunch of stuff in a box and wire it together and it'll work. And, they don't think about stuff like noise coming off of LEDs interfering with it, picking up the voice. So you guys have done a really good job with that.
Yeah, I never thought about audio this much before starting this project. Like I was a musician, and I honestly now I feel like a slouch because there's so much now that you get to start hearing when you're trying to make sure that essentially a robot understands what you're saying, because you catch so much more with those mics than you'd ever expect, and mic sensitivity, like something that is just super, super hard technical challenge, because you want a mic to be sensitive enough to hear everybody that speaks in the room, but not too sensitive to where he hears stuff in the other room and it causes him to trigger, when you don't want him to. And I call it him, and I know some people think that's weird, but when you talk something as much as I have, it gets its own personality kind of in your head. But with the components, yeah, it's been a lot of hard work to get it right. And like I said before, if we were like the first device out there that was doing this, we could maybe slouch a little bit more, but there are already some great devices out there, and there's been some poor devices out there, and we don't want to be in that poor tier of crappy devices. We want to be a good premium working device, and so to do that we have to overcome a lot of engineering challenges, and so we're trying really, really hard to pay attention to detail and to have a good product that's based on open source and be able to say, like, that is open source, that is a great product. We want the two things to be synonymous, and we think that we can do that. We just, it just takes time, development, and hard work.
All right. I think we're going to have to run through most of the rest of these questions. We've had a whole lot come in.
All right, shall we start with the next one then? Nightmare is asking, how far does the Mycroft team plan to go with feature parity when compared against Google and Microsoft offerings?
I think that we're already beating them on feature parity. I mean, our stuff already controls things through the Smart Things hub. It controls various smart lights. It controls Chromecast really well. So you say, like, Mycroft, play the Deadpool trailer on the Chromecast, and it does it. So I think that we've already got a lot of things that I mean, I guess Google Now and Siri might do, but I haven't seen a lot of people controlling their Internet of Things devices with Google Now and Siri. However, to just ask my expectation, I want to blow them out of the water because we have an open source community to rely on for features. So I want to dwarf their features by, a considerable measure. I want to have like 100 features to there if you want. And I don't think that's crazy if you have a lot of passionate people in your community that are hacking on the project. Right now, we're trying to make it really, really easy to develop what I call modules or apps. Some people in the team have started calling them skills, but skills that Mycroft will have, we're trying to make it as easy as possible to develop those skills and to submit them to the project. And so to answer your question, I would like to at least have the same feature set as Google Now or Siri, but honestly, I'd like to have many, many more features, and I think that it's possible. I don't think it's a pipe dream. I think that if the community really doubles down on this project, we can have a ton of features pretty quickly. To answer your question with an example, one of my friends said he wanted a Pokedex for his Mycroft, so he could say, yeah, it's a very nerdy thing to want, but if you played Pokemon, the Pokedex tells you like about the different Pokemon, and he's a nerdy developer just like the rest of us on the team, and he's like, I want to just be able to say, tell me about Pikachu, and it just starts rattling off facts about Pikachu. And so he started developing that module, and so I don't know that Google Now or Siri does that right now. And so that's an example that you can have like whatever nerdy project it is, or it doesn't have to be nerdy. But Josh, our CEO, he flies drones often, and we have 3 drones at the space, and one of them is set up to do essentially predefined flight paths. And so he's been adding predefined flight paths into his modules for Mycroft, so that he can say, Mycroft, have the drone do a perimeter check, and it does one of the predefined flight paths. And so I don't know that Google Now or Siri does that either. And so so I really think that we can knock them out of the park if we get community participation.
If you can get Mycroft to send you a coffee on demand, that would be world changing.
Yes. I would be interested. This is something that maybe if there's a Starbucks rep out there who wants to have a conversation, then hit me up. But actually, I can't remember who it is. I think Dominos has an open API, and so I've been looking at creating a module where I can say, Mycroft, order a pepperoni pizza from Dominos, and have him call out to the API and send my info and order me a pizza. So there are a lot of opportunities here. It's just a matter of creativity, I think. And fortunately, for all the ideas we have, I know that there's 1,000 people out there with even more interesting ideas, and I'm eager to see them.
All right. So we've got about 10 minutes left. Again, I think we'll have to go quickly. One of the things that we can do perhaps is to collect the questions to answer them later on after the Q&A. Anyway, without further ado, the best is asking, how much is Canonical involved in Mycroft? Do you work together?
I don't know if I want to answer this, or if I should have Mike or David answer this. So right now we have we've had conversations. So I reached out to I don't remember who it was on the team now. I think it was Alan Pope, Popey. I reached out to Popey and wanted to talk about if there's any way that Ubuntu and Mycroft could work together, and talked about Snappy a little bit, and we had further conversations, and the Canonical has been really great about sharing information about Snappy with us and helping us really come up with the best way to implement it into our project. So that's one way we've worked together. I've talked to the Unity 7 and Unity 8 team leaders a little bit about how we can implement Mycroft into the desktop and into Unity 8 on the phone and the desktop. And so those conversations are pretty early, but a lot of that has been resting on whether or not we can hit our stretch goal and really get some dedicated development to that. From my personal standpoint, I've been using Ubuntu since probably, I think, like 2005, and so I'm a big fan of Ubuntu, so I would really love to see that relationship continue and to flourish, and I thank these guys, David and Mike, and the rest of the team, and the rest of the guys over at Canonical for helping promote the project. I love the Ubuntu community, and I hope that we can do some neat stuff together, and I can't wait to be able to just throw up the HUD or the launcher and say, Mycroft, open up whatever app and have it happen, because I'm lazy and I don't like clicking any more than I have to. and so I really hope that the relationship continues. I don't know if the Ubuntu guys have any more to add to that, but I hope that we can continue our awesome relationship.
Indeed. So I definitely have something to add. I mean, I think I speak for the whole of the team when we say that we're very, very excited about the project itself, Mycroft. not only because it's open source, it's also open hardware, but also for the fact that they chose Ubuntu. And I was personally very excited to know that that Mycroft was already running with Snappy. It wasn't one of the goals, but rather it is something that's already live with Snappy. So we're very happy to support the team and continue doing it in the future. So I agree with what Brian is saying. Essentially, I think everyone wants this relationship to flourish and to continue. And we were very happy to see that the goal was reached, and we're very much looking forward to the future of Mycroft.
All right, the next question you hit on a little bit just a minute ago, but David Kelly is asking, will people be able to provide snaps to enhance Mycroft, for example, a YouTube data provider? And if yes, what language would they be developing that in?
So right now, all of our modules are created in Python. I don't necessarily think that has to be the only language they can be written in, but it's just the one that we wrote most of the Mycroft project in Python because it's easy and because there's a lot of documentation out there. And when we were considering, we went through a few different iterations of Mycroft to begin with that were not nearly as extensible, and we finally settled on Python out of a lot of research, because we said, what language can we pick that's fairly well known and easy to pick up and use? And I remember reading an article. It was an analysis of like, and I don't remember if it was a poll or an analysis of repos that were out there, but there were a lot of. I remember Python being like one of the top languages that was in use, and that a lot of people knew. And so I decided, I think Python is probably a good way to go for developing this, because I think that most people can pick it up and pretty quickly, and that would lower the barriers of entry to submitting modules to Mycroft and submitting code to Mycroft. But like I said, we're going to probably look at how to make modules in some other languages as well, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to encourage is people to submit modules, and we want to remove as many barriers to do that as possible. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. And so if you're already a Python expert, be happy. You probably won't have that much trouble contributing.
Okay, so next question is from Nightmare. Is there any planned collaboration between the Mycroft and Sirius teams? And he's showing the Sirius URL, which
if I remember right, is kind of like an open source Siri.
Right.
Could you guys drop that in the chat for me?
Yeah, I'm just gonna do that. It's Sirius.
To answer your question, I don't think so at this time, but I'm happy to. Okay, this is interesting. I'm happy to invite any.
Oh, I think we just lost him.
All right.
I think I dropped out there.
You're right.
Yes.
So to answer the question, I'm more than happy to invite any teams that are already working on similar challenges to reach out to us. I would love to work with any existing open source teams. Like, for instance, I'm aware of Jasper. Jasper is a slightly different problems, and so I wouldn't be opposed to working with them. And I've reached out to at least one of the developers over there. But anybody else who is aware of any projects that are similar to ours, or working on any open source projects that are similar to ours, I would love to see where we can work together to tackle these complex goals that we're trying to tackle. And now I have an interesting thing to read after this Q&A.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time, and we're nowhere near the end of the questions. So I think we're going to take all of the questions that we haven't answered and send them on to you to get a text answer to them posted somewhere. Do you have a blog where we can post those once they're answered?
It's mycroft.ai/blog. And I will follow up and answer all those questions in one big blog post.
All right. And the non-Mycroft questions, I know we got some in about Snappy Desktop and Unity 8, and I think next week we're going to have Will Cook and/or Kevin Gunn on this Q&A to talk more about that. So if you come back next week, same time, same place, with those questions, we'll have people on who can answer them for you.
All right. Okay, shall we take a couple more though? What do you guys think? We've got about 2 minutes.
Well, Ryan said he had something to read off at the end, so.
Oh no, I was talking about the serious link that I got.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. So
let me get through a couple more.
Yeah. Let's. So let's take one Ubuntu one and one Mycroft one. So Return Trip is asking, will you have an Android companion app? Will you also sell the extendable backplate as an option in case I want to upgrade my basic unit into an extendable unit? Well, that's 2 questions into one. There you go.
The answer is yes and yes. We are planning on having a desktop application. We're planning on having a phone application on Android, iPhone, and Ubuntu phone, and for controlling your Mycroft and setting up the different modules and everything. And then the other question is, yes, you will be able to buy an extendable backplate as well as other accessories from our website store after the campaign.
All right, so I'm going to answer this one as I promised. AMP once asked these questions to get to the Ubuntu question. So I'm going to be quick. Recently, we saw a video showing legacy X11 applications running on Mir Unity 8. Are these apps running in the same isolated, secure fashion as native SDK apps do? I mean, can I be sure that the proprietary legacy app that I'm running on the next-gen Ubuntu cannot see any of my other files, open apps, sensitive system data? So that's the first part of the question. The second part, I think we'll leave it for next week. Otherwise, it's going to be too long. Yeah. So what you're seeing, what you saw on that video, it's pretty much work in progress. So expect things to change. But these applications were confined already. The only thing that was different was that on that particular demo, they were all running in one single container rather than individually contained individually isolated as phone apps do. So yeah, essentially work in progress. It was already isolated, but expect more changes to come.
That was an awesome video, by the way.
Yeah. By the way, kudos to the Mir/Unity team for creating that video, and well, not only for the video but for the work that goes behind that video. I think it was Kevin Gunn who's managing the team on camera, and we had I think it was Chris Rogers who was doing the demo. I can't remember right now. I couldn't see his face, but I remember the voice. So kudos to the team to bring up that demo to everyone, and especially expect more coming up in the next few weeks. Expect more cool videos. All right, and I think with this we can wrap up this week's Q&A. Thanks so much, Ryan, for coming up, for answering all the questions, for explaining the stories behind Mycroft. I'm sure everyone enjoyed them. I myself and the rest of the team certainly did. And perhaps we can join another Q&A, perhaps doing a live demo of the unit at some point.
Yeah, and I didn't get my IRC chat pulled up in time, but if one of you guys could drop our link in there, I would encourage people to back us so that we can hit that stretch goal to get somebody working full time on the desktop and Ubuntu phone integration.
Yep, just a reminder, there's just under 2 days left in that campaign, so don't wait, get your pledges in now. They've got about, what, 15,000 to go to reach that stretch goal?
Yep, and we've already gone up, I think it was 4,000 this morning, so I encourage you, it looks like we might be able to make it, based on how quickly it's raised this morning, but we really need everybody who can to help us get there. So if you can, please do pledge.
And we're also in the middle of a competition right now. We didn't mention this, but we do have a contest going on to drive some traffic to this campaign. So if you go to my blog, mhall119.com, I posted a link in there. It'll give you instructions on how to do that. Basically, you create your own custom link with your name in it, and you share that around to your friends on social media, write a blog post, whatever. And then at the end of the campaign, we will go and count the number of click-throughs on those links, and whoever's gotten the most click-throughs will get a Mycroft extendable unit. And the top 3 will actually have their names in Mycroft's long-term memory. So there's going to be kind of an Easter egg in there on all the Mycroft devices where, in response to a specific query, it'll mention off these top 3 people. So that's kind of cool. Go and do that.
By the way, my favorite Easter egg that we already have in there, and I'd like to share, is if you ask Mycroft to open the pod bay doors, he'll say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave." So your Easter egg, if you share, your Easter egg will live alongside that one in Mycroft's long-term memory. And I feel bad because if Mycroft, is one of those projects that lives on for a long, long time and eventually makes it into some space system, that's probably going to cause some terrible accident in space because someone's going to be locked out and they're going to be like, "Mycroft, open the pod bay doors," and he'll be like, "I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave." And the guy's going to be like, "What?" And so I apologize in advance to any astronauts who have Mycroft powering their future space missions.
Just don't put pod bay doors on the spaceship and you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Or name them differently. Name them something other than pod bay doors.
All right. Anyway, so nevertheless, wishing that Mycroft makes it to space. I think that's a nice stuff to finish the.
Hopefully, spaceships run on Snappy Core Ubuntu as well.
There you go.
All right. So
all right, thank you again, Ryan, for coming on.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
All right, then. So see you guys next week on the next Q&A. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.